these energy markets are tight. Oil, those prices, as Dan said at the beginning, they're up a lot over the last several weeks because spare capacity is shrunk. And so it's a tight oil market, and it's a very tight gas market. And you're just back from Kiev, and there's no question that this sense of imminent crisis building with Russia and Ukraine is also hanging over the market, particularly since Russia does provide about 35% of Europe's gas. And what happens in a crisis, no one knows.
What about President Biden? Why haven't we been hearing grumblings from the White House about A, higher oil prices, and B, this gas crisis? Because we do know that there have been a heck of a lot of American LNG exports to Europe at this point.
Right. Well, I think there's been a real turnaround that the administration has suddenly discovered oil and gas. At the end of last year, the Secretary of Energy actually talked to the oil industry publicly about what about increasing oil supplies. And by the way, the U.S.
It took them a while, didn't it?
Yeah, they discovered. And of course, LNG, as Fadi just referred to it, is what is brought prices down in Europe. But please note that gas prices are still about 4 or 5 times higher than normal. But and the thing is, the U.S. right now is back as a producer. Today, the U.S. is producing 2 million barrels a day more oil than either Russia or Saudi Arabia. Without this growth in U.S. oil production, the world would really be in a tough spot.
So is this President Biden taking a chill pill, if you will, on the energy transition narrative?
Yeah, I think, or let's say moving at two different speeds, still saying, going to move ahead on that. And of course, there was Glasgow. But remember, Glasgow happened in the middle of Europe's and Asia's energy crisis. And so, when energy prices go up, and by the way, the other big question here is, of course, inflation. And this feeds right into inflation. So with gasoline prices, despite the release of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, going to go up, that is a political problem in an election year.
Hi, Dan. It's Dan here. Wanted to get your reaction to a tweet that we saw from Carl Bildt just in the past 24 hours. He says, "We are in the most dangerous security situation in Europe since the 1960s. And I'm wondering how you think the West can respond to this, because do you think the Western response to this crisis between Russia and Ukraine is constrained by the European gas crunch and the Russian gas position?
Well, I think that it certainly factors into it that, the U.S. government in the last few days has been going around talking to gas companies, energy companies, saying, can you provide more gas? Is there more gas? And the answer is there's not a lot more gas. And I think Carl Bildt, former from Sweden, is really referring to, it reminds one in some ways of the Berlin crisis in the 1960s. And the cards are all in Vladimir Putin's hands. We're back in a Cold War game of trying to guess what his intentions are. But when you see 100,000 troops on the border, when you read his 5,000-word essay about how Ukraine and Russia are one, and his general remarks about how that Ukraine was, taken away from Russia, it makes you think that, that something serious is going to happen, whether it's a full-out invasion or just take part of Ukraine. These are not casual things he's doing. And Hadley, as you know, those negotiations that just finished in Europe were meant to fail from the beginning because the Russians put out demands that were totally unacceptable to the West.